The flash of cameras sent Eliza Owens ducking through the revolving doors of the small coffee shop, her designer sunglasses hardly disguising the panic in her eyes. This wasn't how her Tuesday morning was supposed to go, ambushed outside her hotel by a swarm of paparazzi who'd somehow gotten wind that the CEO of Owens Technologies was in town. Yanking her cashmere scarf higher to cover her face, she scanned the crowded cafe for anywhere to hide. The baristas were already staring, recognition dawning on their faces. "Miss, you can come this way if you need to." The voice came from her left, a tall man with kind eyes, holding open a door marked "Staff Only." Behind him peeked a little girl, maybe 6 or 7, clutching a worn teddy bear. Without hesitation, Eliza darted toward them just as the first photographers burst through the front door. The man quickly ushered her through, closing the door behind them. "Thank you," she breathed, her heart hammering in her chest. "I'm so sorry to intrude. Dad, is she running from bad guys?" The little girl whispered loudly, eyes wide with excitement. The man, early 30s, Eliza guessed, with dark hair and the beginnings of laugh lines around his eyes, gave his daughter a gentle smile. "Just people who don't understand privacy, Sophie." He turned to Eliza. "I'm Yates Zimmerman." "This is my daughter." "Hi," Sophie said, wiggling her fingers in a wave. "You're pretty." Despite her frazzled state, Eliza found herself smiling. "Thank you, Sophie, I'm Eliza." "You can stay in our office until they leave," Yates offered, gesturing to a tiny back room with a desk covered in paperwork and a small couch. "It's not much, but it's paparazzi-free. You have no idea how much I appreciate this." Eliza sank onto the couch, suddenly exhausted. "I just wanted coffee, not a media circus." Yates rubbed the back of his neck. "Sophie and I were just about to have our morning hot chocolate. Would you like some?" "Hot chocolate sounds perfect, actually." As Yates went to prepare the drinks, Sophie climbed up beside Eliza, teddy bear in tow. "This is Mr. Beans," she announced, holding up the well-loved toy. "Dad says I'm supposed to share my special things with guests." Something about the child's earnestness made Eliza's throat tight. "It's very nice to meet you, Mr. Beans. Thank you for sharing your space with me." Yates returned with 3 steaming mugs, handing the smallest one to Sophie with exaggerated care. "Careful, princess. It's hot." "I know, Dad," Sophie said with the exasperated patience of a child who'd heard the same warning countless times. Eliza accepted her mug, noticing the slight tremble in Yates's hands and the worn cuffs of his button-down shirt. The office space told its own story-budget furniture, a calendar marked with payment due dates, and a child's drawings taped to every available surface. "So," Yates said, perching on the edge of the desk, "do you make a habit of being chased by photographers, or is this a special occasion?" "Unfortunately, it happens more than I'd like," Eliza admitted. "I'm in town for a tech conference, and I thought I'd manage to slip out unnoticed this morning." "You make phones," Sophie announced confidently. "I saw you on Dad's computer." Yates flushed. "Sophie, it's fine," Eliza laughed. "Yes, my company makes phones, among other things." "Dad needs a new phone. His is broken here and here." Sophie pointed to imaginary spots in the air. "Sophie, that's enough." Yates's embarrassment was palpable. "Miss Owens doesn't need to hear about my ancient phone." Eliza studied him over the rim of her mug. Most people she encountered wanted something from her connections, investments, publicity. But Yates Zimmerman seemed genuinely uncomfortable with his daughter's innocent disclosure of their financial situation. "Is this your coffee shop?" she asked, changing the subject. "I manage it," he replied. "The owner lives in Florida. It's not glamorous, but the hours work with Sophie's school schedule." "Dad makes the best muffins," Sophie added, chocolate mustache forming on her upper lip. "He's gonna open his own bakery someday." The look that crossed Yates's face, a mixture of pride and something that looked like sadness, caught Eliza's attention. "Is that so?" she asked gently. "That's the dream," he said with a small smile. "But dreams take capital, and single-dad coffee shop managers aren't exactly prime loan candidates." Before Eliza could respond, there was a knock at the door. A barista poked her head in. "Mr. Z, those photographers finally left, said they're heading to the conference center." "Thank you, Amber." Yates turned to Eliza. "Looks like the coast is clear." Relief flooded through her, followed quickly by an unexpected reluctance to leave. There was something refreshing about this tiny back room with its honesty and hot chocolate. I should get going. She stood, straightening her designer coat. I can't thank you enough for the rescue. Anytime, Yates said, then added with a self-deprecating laugh, though I hope you don't make a habit of needing rescues in this neighborhood. Can you come back sometime? Sophie asked, clutching Mr. Bean's. You didn't get to hear my joke about the penguin. Eliza found herself kneeling to the child's level. I would love to hear your penguin joke, Sophie. Maybe I can come back tomorrow morning. The little girl's face lit up, and Eliza felt something warm unfurl in her chest. When she stood and met Yates's surprised gaze, she realized she meant it. That is if it's okay with your dad. We're here every morning at 7, he said softly. Sophie helps me set up before school. 7 it is then. Eliza extended her hand, which Yates took. His palm was warm against hers, calloused and strong. Thank you again, Mr. Zimmerman. Just Yates, please. Yates, she smiled, surprised by how right his name felt on her lips. See you tomorrow. As she slipped out through the back exit, Eliza found herself looking forward to the next morning more than the multi-million-dollar conference she was supposed to be keynoting that afternoon. True to her word, Eliza arrived at exactly 7 the next morning. The coffee shop wasn't officially open yet, but when she tapped lightly on the glass door, Sophie's face appeared, beaming with excitement. Dad. She came back. The little girl bounced on her toes as Yates hurried over to unlock the door. Good morning, he said, seeming genuinely surprised to see her. I wasn't sure you'd actually welcome. Eliza stepped inside, inhaling the rich scent of fresh coffee and baking pastries. She dressed down to-day jeans, a simple blouse and minimal makeup. Her security team had balked at her insistence on coming alone, but she'd been firm. This wasn't a business meeting or a photo opportunity. I promised Sophie I'd hear her penguin joke, she said, smiling at the child who was now tugging her toward a table already set with 3 mugs. I made you hot chocolate again, Sophie announced proudly. Dad helped with the hot part. That was very thoughtful, thank you. As they settled at the table, Eliza noticed the care that had gone into the preparation of a small vase with a single daisy, napkins folded into triangles, and what looked like freshly baked muffins on a plate. Blueberry, Yates said, noticing her gaze. Nothing fancy, but they're Sophie's favorite. Mine too, actually. Eliza took one, the warmth seeping through her fingers. This is lovely, thank you both. Okay, my joke now. Sophie straightened in her chair, clearing her throat dramatically. What do penguins eat for lunch? Eliza pretended to think hard. Ice cream. No. Sophie giggled. Ice burgers. The joke was terrible, and Sophie's delight in telling it so pure that Eliza found herself laughing genuinely, catching Yates's eye over his daughter's head. His smile transformed his entire face, softening the worry lines that seemed permanently etched around his mouth. That's an excellent joke, Eliza said, high-fiving Sophie. You should be a comedian. Dad says I can be anything I want if I work hard. Sophie took a big bite of muffin, crumbs spilling onto the table, even an astronaut veterinarian. Your dad sounds very wise. Yates blushed slightly. I just don't want to limit her thinking. The world has enough people telling kids what they can't do. There was something in his tone that made Eliza curious. What did you want to be when you were Sophie's age? He hesitated, then said, a chef, actually. I always loved cooking. He makes the bestest spaghetti, Sophie chimed in, but not as good as his cake. Baking is my real passion, Yates admitted. But life had other plans after Sophie's mom left. The bakery idea is more of a someday thing now. The casual mention of Sophie's mother caught Eliza off guard, though she tried not to show it. How long have you been on your own? 4 years, Yates said, helping Sophie wipe blueberry from her chin. Sophie was barely 3. It was an adjustment. Sophie seemed untroubled by the conversation. Mommy lives in California with her new family. She sends me birthday presents sometimes. The matter-of-fact way she said it broke Eliza's heart a little. Before she could respond, the front door opened, and an older woman in a floral dress entered. Mrs. Martinez, good morning, Yates called, standing quickly. We're not quite open yet, but I can get you your usual. Take your time, Yates, the woman said, smiling warmly. I'm just dropping off Sophie's permission slip for the field trip. You forgot to sign it yesterday. Right, sorry about that. He rummaged in his pocket for a pen. Work's been busy, Mrs. Martinez approached their table, curious eyes landing on Eliza. Good morning, are you a friend of our Yates? This is Eliza, Sophie answered before either adult could speak. She's hiding from the picture people and she likes my jokes. Eliza extended her hand. It's nice to meet you, Mrs. Martinez. Recognition dawned on the older woman's face, though she tactfully didn't comment on Eliza's identity. Any friend of the Zimmermans is a friend of mine. I watch Sophie after school, she explained. These two are special ones, after Mrs. Martinez left with promises to see Sophie that afternoon. Yates glanced at his watch with a sigh. I hate to cut this short, but I need to open up, and Sophie has to get to school in 20 minutes. I should get going too, Eliza said, suddenly reluctant to return to her world of meetings and shareholders. Sophie tugged at her sleeve. Will you come back tomorrow? I know more jokes. Eliza looked to Yates, who seemed caught between hope and caution. I wouldn't want to impose on your morning routine. You're not, he said quietly. It's been nice having company. Usually it's just us and the muffins. The honesty in his voice decided her. Then I'd love to come back, and maybe, she hesitated, then pushed forward. Maybe I could take you both to dinner tonight, as a thank you for rescuing me yesterday. Sophie's eyes widened. Like a restaurant with fancy napkins, if that's okay with your dad. Yates looked genuinely torn. That's very kind, but we couldn't let you, please, Dad. Sophie bounced in her chair. I'll wear my special dress and everything. Looking between his daughter's pleading face and Eliza's gentle smile, Yates finally nodded. Okay, dinner would be nice, thank you. They agreed on a time and place a family restaurant not too fancy but nice enough for Sophie's special dress, and exchanged phone numbers. As Eliza stood to leave, Sophie surprised her with a quick hug around the waist. See you later, Eliza. I'm going to tell all my friends I know a real-life phone maker. Yates walked her to the door, now unlocked as customers began filtering in. I'm sorry about that. She gets excited about new people. Don't apologize, she's wonderful. Eliza meant it. 7 o'clock tonight, we'll be there. He hesitated, then added, just to be clear, this isn't. I mean, I don't expect anything because of who you are. Sophie and I are fine. I don't want you to think I don't, Eliza interrupted gently. I just want to have dinner with the two people who made me feel normal for the first time in years. Is that okay? The relief in his eyes was answer enough. The restaurant Eliza had chosen was upscale enough to feel special but comfortable enough that families with children were welcome. She arrived early, securing a quiet corner table and arranging for a booster seat for Sophie. Though her assistant had nearly had a meltdown when Eliza canceled her business dinner, she felt strangely calm about her decision. When Yates and Sophie arrived, Eliza's breath caught. Sophie was radiant in a purple dress with silver stars, her hair carefully braided and secured with matching purple ribbons. But it was Yates who truly surprised her. He'd traded his work clothes for dark jeans and a blue button-down that brought out the intensity of his eyes. He'd clearly made an effort, and something about that touched her deeply. Eliza, look at my sparkly shoes, Sophie twirled, showing off glittery sneakers that blinked with each step. Very fashionable, Eliza approved before meeting Yates's gaze. You both look wonderful. So do you, he said quietly, and she was suddenly glad she'd chosen her favorite green dress rather than something more businesslike. Dinner was unlike any Eliza had experienced in years. Sophie dominated the conversation with stories about her day at school, her upcoming field trip to the aquarium, and detailed descriptions of every fish she hoped to see. Yates was more reserved but gradually opened up, revealing a sharp wit and thoughtfulness that drew Eliza in more than she expected. So how did you end up managing a coffee shop? She asked as they shared dessert, a massive chocolate cake that had Sophie's eyes growing wide. Necessity at first, Yates admitted. After Sophie's mom left, I needed flexible hours and steady pay. I was working as a line cook at a restaurant, but the hours were terrible for single parenting. Dad makes the best food, Sophie chimed in, chocolate smeared across her cheek. He went to cooking school and everything. Culinary school, Yates corrected gently. For a year before Sophie came along, had to drop out when we found out Amanda was pregnant. Do you regret it? Eliza asked, then immediately backtracked. I'm sorry, that's too personal. No, it's a fair question. He glanced at Sophie, who was busy arranging her cake into tiny mountains. I don't regret Sophie, not for a second, but sometimes I wonder what might have been if I'd finished school, opened that bakery. He shrugged. Life happens. What about you? He asked, turning the conversation. Did you always know you'd run your family's company? Eliza traced the rim of her water glass. Not exactly. I studied art history in college, my small rebellion, but when my father got sick 5 years ago, I stepped in temporarily. Then he passed away and temporarily became permanently. I'm sorry about your father, Yates said, and the genuine sympathy in his voice reminded her how rarely people saw past her wealth to the actual person. Thank you. It was hard, but the company was his legacy. I couldn't let it fail. Is it what you want, though? The directness of his question startled her. Most people didn't dare ask Eliza Owens if being a billionaire CEO was what she wanted. Parts of it, she answered honestly. I love the innovation, seeing ideas become reality. The rest, the politics, the publicity, the constant scrutiny, that part I could do without. Like the people with cameras yesterday, Sophie said, looking up from her dessert sculpture. Exactly like that, Eliza smiled. As the evening wound down, Sophie began to yawn, her sugar rush fading. When she climbed into Eliza's lap to show her a loose tooth, Eliza felt an unexpected surge of emotion. She caught Yates watching them, something unreadable in his expression. We should get this one to bed, he said softly. Thank you for dinner, Eliza. It was special. Can Eliza come see my room sometime? Sophie asked sleepily as Yates helped her into her jacket. I have a cool space poster. The invitation hung in the air between the adults, laden with meaning beyond a child's simple request. Eliza found herself holding her breath. Maybe someday, Yates said carefully, meeting Eliza's eyes, if she'd like to. I would like that very much, Eliza replied, surprised by how much she meant it. Outside the restaurant, her driver waited discreetly in a luxury sedan. The contrast between their worlds couldn't have been more apparent. Can we give you a ride home? She offered, though she already suspected the answer. We're just a few blocks away, Yates declined politely. The walk will help wear off some of that chocolate energy. Sophie, fighting sleep but determined, gave Eliza a sticky hug. See you tomorrow for hot chocolate. I'll be there, Eliza promised, then impulsively added to Yates, unless, would you like to show me that bakery space you mentioned, the one you've been looking at? Surprise flickered across his face. You want to see a run-down storefront? I want to see your dream, she said simply. Something shifted in his expression. Tomorrow afternoon, Sophie has a playdate after school. It's a date. The words slipped out before she could catch it, and the slight widening of his eyes told her he'd caught it too. As she watched them walk away, Sophie's small hand tucked in her father's larger one. Eliza realized she was looking forward to tomorrow more than she'd looked forward to anything in a very long time. The following morning's hot chocolate ritual felt like a tradition already, with Sophie regaling Eliza with new jokes and stories before heading off to school. When Yates mentioned he'd meet Eliza at 2 o'clock at the address he texted her, she found herself counting the hours through her morning meetings. The storefront was indeed run down, a former hardware store with dusty windows and peeling paint, but as Yates unlocked the door with a key he'd borrowed from the rental agent, his excitement was palpable. The owner's asking too much for its condition, he explained, leading her into the empty space. But the location is perfect, close to the elementary school, on a street with good foot traffic. As he walked her through the space, his hands gesturing animatedly, Eliza saw not the cracked tiles and water-stained ceiling, but the vision he described: display cases filled with pastries, small tables where customers could linger, a kitchen where he could finally create the recipes he'd been perfecting for years. Sophie would have her own little corner here, he said, pointing to an alcove near the windows. For homework after school or reading on weekends. You've thought of everything, Eliza observed, touched by how central Sophie was to every aspect of his planning. I've had years to think about it, he admitted. Probably too many years of dreaming instead of doing. Why haven't you? He leaned against a dusty counter. Money, mostly. Banks aren't eager to loan to a single dad with inconsistent credit history. And starting a business means risk. If it failed, I'd be risking Sophie's stability too. What if the risk were minimized? Eliza asked carefully. If you had an investor, Yates stiffened slightly. Eliza, hear me out, she said quickly. I invest in businesses all the time. Usually tech startups, but I've been looking to diversify. A bakery in a growing neighborhood with an experienced chef, that's a solid investment. Is that what this is? His voice was quiet. An investment opportunity, the question hung between them, loaded with unspoken meaning. Eliza took a step closer to him. No, she admitted. That's not what this is, but I thought framing it that way might make it easier for you to accept help. I don't want your pity, Eliza. It's not pity. She met his gaze steadily. In 3 days, you and Sophie have shown me more genuine kindness than most people have in years. Do you know how rare that is in my world? People who just see me, not what I can do for them. Yates's expression softened. We like you for your hot chocolate consumption, not your bank account. The tension broke as they both laughed. Eliza moved to the front windows, looking out at the street. I understand pride, Yates, but sometimes opportunities come from unexpected places. Maybe instead of fighting so hard to do everything alone, you could consider this a door opening. He was silent for so long that she thought she'd overstepped. When she turned, he was watching her with an intensity that made her breath catch. Why are you doing this? He asked finally. The honest answer terrified her, but she gave it anyway. Because in 3 days, I've started to care about what happens to you and Sophie. Because I want to see your dream become real. Because, she took a deep breath. Because when I'm with you two, I feel like myself again. Yates crossed the room to her, stopping just close enough that she could see the flecks of gold in his brown eyes. I don't know how to reconcile who you are out there, he gestured toward the street, with who you are when you're sitting at our table eating blueberry muffins. They're the same person, Eliza said softly. I'm just better at being myself around you. Something shifted in his expression, and for a breathless moment she thought he might kiss her. Instead, he took her hand, his thumb brushing across her knuckles. I need to think about this, he said. Not just the bakery, but all of it. There's Sophie to consider, and your life isn't exactly designed for school pickups and chicken nugget dinners. I understand, she replied, though disappointment coursed through her. Take all the time you need. As they locked up the storefront, Yates turned to her with a small smile. For what it's worth, I think you'd be surprisingly good at chicken nugget dinners. That evening, Eliza declined 3 invitations to high-profile events, ordered room service in her hotel suite, and found herself scrolling through real estate listings in neighborhoods near Sophie's school. When her phone buzzed with a text from Yates, her heart leaped. Sophie asked if you'd like to come to her school play tomorrow. She's a sea turtle, no pressure. Eliza replied immediately, I'd be honored. What time? The following weeks established a rhythm that became increasingly precious to Eliza. Mornings at the coffee shop became part of her routine, even after her conference ended and she extended her stay in the city for business. Evenings often involved dinner with Yates and Sophie, weekend outings to the park, and increasingly, quiet conversations with Yates after Sophie went to bed. They moved cautiously, both aware of the complexity of their situation. But with each passing day, the connection between them deepened. One rainy Saturday afternoon, a month after their first meeting, Eliza sat on Yates's worn couch helping Sophie build an elaborate fort from blankets and chairs. Yates was in the kitchen of the modest apartment, the scent of his famous spaghetti filling the small space. Dad says you make him smile more, Sophie announced, arranging a blanket as their fort's roof. Eliza's hands stilled. Did he? Sophie nodded matter-of-factly. He told Mrs. Martinez that you make his heart feel big again. Is that because you're going to help with his bakery? Maybe partly, Eliza said carefully, but I think it's more because we enjoy spending time together. Do you love my dad? The question was delivered with a child's directness. Before Eliza could formulate an answer, Yates appeared in the doorway, a dish towel over his shoulder and shock on his face. Sophie, that's not it's okay, Eliza interrupted, meeting his gaze over Sophie's head. It's a fair question. She turned back to the little girl. I care about your dad very much, Sophie, and about you too. Sophie considered this. Good, because Dad cries sometimes when he thinks I'm sleeping, but he hasn't cried since you started coming over. The simple observation hung in the air as Sophie returned to Fort Construction. When Eliza looked up, Yates's expression was raw with emotion. Dinner's ready, he said softly. Why don't you go wash up, Sophie? Once the child had scampered off, Yates sat beside Eliza among the blanket ruins. Kids and their timing, he said with a nervous laugh. Is it true? Eliza asked. What she said, he looked down at his hands, then back at her with remarkable courage in his eyes. Yes, all of it. You've changed things for us, Eliza, for me. You've changed things for me too, she admitted. My assistant says I'm unrecognizable. Apparently, I smile during board meetings now. Yates laughed, then grew serious. I've been thinking about your offer, the bakery. And I'd like to accept, but with conditions. He took her hand. It has to be legitimate, proper paperwork, reasonable interest rates, clear expectations. I need to do this right, to show Sophie that dreams require work, not just luck or knowing the right people. Eliza squeezed his fingers. I wouldn't have it any other way. I believe in your talent, Yates. There's something else. He took a deep breath. This thing between us, I want to see where it goes. But I need to know you're here for us, not just for the novelty of blueberry muffins and school plays. Sophie's already getting attached, and I can't. Eliza silenced him with a kiss, their first gentle but filled with promise. When she pulled back, his eyes remained closed for a moment, as if savoring the sensation. I'm here, she said simply, for both of you, for all of it. Even though your life is private jets and shareholders, and mine is permission slips and macaroni art, especially because of that. She smiled. You make me remember who I am beyond the company, and as for the lifestyle differences, we'll figure it out, together. Sophie bounded back into the room, hair damp from washing. I'm starving. Did you kiss while I was gone? Jenny at school says grown-ups always kiss when kids leave the room. Yates and Eliza exchanged glances, then burst out laughing. Maybe we did, Yates said, pulling his daughter into a hug. Is that okay with you? Sophie considered this gravely. Only if Eliza stays for breakfast too. Her hot chocolate is getting better. I think that can be arranged, Eliza said, her heart fuller than she could remember it being in years. 1 year later, Yates stood in the center of his bakery Zimmerman's, surveying the bustling Saturday morning crowd. The display cases gleamed with pastries and bread, while the walls featured framed reviews from local food critics, praising the unpretentious excellence of his creations. In the corner alcove, Sophie, now 8, was helping Eliza decorate cookies for an upcoming charity event. Flour dusted both their cheeks, and the sound of their laughter carried above the cafe chatter. The past year had brought changes none of them could have predicted. The bakery had opened to immediate success, with lines often stretching down the block. Eliza had restructured her role at Owens Technologies, appointing a COO to handle daily operations while she focused on product development, a change that allowed her to work remotely 3 days a week. Most significantly, she'd moved into a house just 10 minutes from Sophie's school, where Yates and Sophie spent more nights than not. They were taking their time, building their relationship thoughtfully with Sophie at the center of every decision. Earth to Yates, Eliza called, breaking into his thoughts. We need expert opinion on our cookie designs. As he crossed to join them, his phone buzzed with a text from his real estate agent. Another property had come available, this one perfect for the second Zimmerman's location they'd been discussing. What do you think? Sophie held up a lopsided heart, cookie slathered in pink frosting. It's for the wedding. Their friends Maria and David were getting married next weekend, and Sophie was taking her role as junior baker very seriously. It's perfect, Yates assured her, dropping a kiss on her head before turning to Eliza. And what masterpiece have you created? Eliza revealed her cookie, a surprisingly detailed rendering of a coffee cup. In honor of where it all began. Speaking of beginnings, Yates said casually, I got a text about that second location. Eliza's eyes lit up. The one near the high school, that's perfect for expansion. I thought maybe we could go look at it tomorrow. as equal partners this time. The significance wasn't lost on her. Their carefully maintained professional boundaries, her insistence on being a silent partner in the first bakery, despite Yates's protests, had been important to both of them. This shift meant something. Equal partners, she repeated, a smile spreading across her face. I'd like that. Sophie looked between them, frosting forgotten. Does this mean Eliza's going to live with us for real now, not just sometimes? Yates met Eliza's gaze over their daughter's head, for Sophie had become as much Eliza's as his over the past year. What do you think? He asked Eliza softly, ready to commit to full-time chicken nugget dinners and homework help. Eliza set down her piping bag and took both their hands in hers, one large and calloused, one small and sticky with frosting. I think, she said, her voice steady despite the emotion threatening to overwhelm her, that I've never been more ready for anything in my life. Later that night, after Sophie had fallen asleep surrounded by her stuffed animals, Mr. Bean still holding the place of honor, Yates and Eliza stood on the back porch of her house, looking up at the stars. A year ago, I was hiding from paparazzi in your storage room, Eliza mused, leaning into his embrace. If someone had told me then where we'd be now. You wouldn't have believed them, Yates finished, his chin resting on top of her head. No, I would have, she corrected him. Because even then, I felt it that something important was happening. He turned her in his arms, his expression serious in the moonlight. You know, it hasn't all been easy. The tabloids, the adjustments, figuring out how to blend our worlds. The best things rarely are easy, she replied. But they're worth it. You're worth it, he said simply. You and Sophie, you're everything I never knew to hope for. As their lips met under the night sky, Eliza knew with absolute certainty that the real fortune in her life had nothing to do with the billions in her bank account, and everything to do with a chance encounter, a little girl's penguin joke, and the man who had shown her that sometimes the richest life is found in the simplest moments. And somewhere in the distance, far beyond their awareness or concern, a camera flashed, capturing the tech mogul and the baker in their private moment. By morning, the photo would grace gossip sites with headlines speculating about their relationship, but for once, Eliza Owens couldn't care less about the paparazzi. She had found something far more valuable than privacy. She had found home.